Hey YouTube guitar enthusiasts, Barre Cooke here, folk rock acoustic guitar series, to talk to you a little bit about bar chords. And I just did a shorter video, about 4 minutes, showing this exercise that I've been using in the last month to build up bar strength in my index finger for the purpose of playing bar chords like F or E flat. And this is a longer video to explain how I use that exercise, and maybe more importantly, why. Start with why. Why do you? Obviously, there's value in improving your bar chords because you want to play bar chords well, cleanly, and so it helps to have an exercise. So that's why I made the 4-minute exercise video. But specifically, why? Why did I undertake this? In my folk playing, I was hitting a wall with a few songs, and I realized really that the real core problem wasn't practicing these bits more wasn't going to help. It wasn't muscle memory or something like that. It was just a basic problem with a lack of index finger strength for barring. So my fingers would fatigue early, and I wouldn't be able to complete the passages that were required to play these songs. And you all know that I'm a Bruce Cockburn fan, and of course he uses lots of bar chords. And one of the things that he does in songs like Rocket Launcher, he'll hold the bar and he'll play the bass note with his thumb, and then he'll solo over top of the bar. Play that way requires a couple of things. First, you need to have a really dexterous baby finger. But you need a rock solid bass, which is the index finger holding the bar down to doing all that soloing over top of the drone bass note. So without that strong bar, you're not going to get very far with Bruce Cockburn. Parts he plays, often you've got to hold that for a minute while you're so if you've got to hold a bar for a minute or longer, you've got to have a strong index finger. And so Rocket Launcher, of course, is one of his more famous songs. It's one I love. It's not really a crowd pleaser at parties because of the tone of the song, but it's a rewarding song to be able to learn how to play. So strong bar and a nimble fingers 3 and 4 to do the soloing over top of the bar. And so that was the first song, Rocket Launcher. I was fed up with running into a block with Rocket Launcher. So I knew if the time had come to strengthen my bar, and I looked on YouTube, looked for exercises, and I found that the advice was inappropriate. So I developed my own exercise, and that's what the short 4-minute video, it just shows the exercise to do to improve your bar strength, your index finger strength and toughness, and the strength of that clamp that you have like a capo through here. How to strengthen this muscle, the wrist muscle and the finger muscle. Those muscles need strengthening. Bruce has big hands. A lot of great guitar players, whether it's Eric Johnson or Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix, they have really big fingers, and I don't. So it means I still like to play their music, so I've got to compensate somehow, and so that's why I developed that exercise. So Rocket Launcher was the first thing. I was tired of running into a wall with that song. But another song that I really like, it sounds easy, it sounds good, but it sounds easy, and it's really not easy at all. It's Incandescent Blue by Bruce Cockburn. and both those songs are standard tuning. And Incandescent Blue, he has this repeating motif, and there are 3 chords in particular. The G over the B bass with the 6-string silence. So that's the chord, but then he's doing a hammer on and pull off with the F sharp on the 1st string. And then that chord shape moved up. So if this is G over the B bass, move it up to, then this is going to be the A shape over the C sharp bass. And now this time he's doing a partial bar on 3 of the strings. And he's leaving the D string, the 4th string, open. So this is quite hard, because not only do you have to hold that partial bar, the 3 strings, strong for about 4 or 5 seconds, you also have to, you can't cheat it. Your fingers have to be bent to get that 1st string to play cleanly, and to get the 4th string to play cleanly. You can't nudge your index finger up against that 4th string, otherwise it'll be muted. So you can only bar 3 strings. So you need that partial bar on this chord. Now those chords are hard enough because it involves fingers number 3 and number 4. And that's the other barrier that I was running into. My 3rd and 4th fingers were not nimble enough, neither for the soloing for rocket launcher on the 7th position. Nor for Incandescent Blue. So. Now I'm not playing that cleanly there either, but to be fair, these are 13 gauge strings. These are the strings that I've been using over the last month, a heavier gauge to strength train. What I'm going to do is switch these strings over to 12s and see now if I can play that motif more clearly. I bet that I can. So that's the first chord sequences. But there's another chord in there, which is this one. And that one's not easy to play either. You can see it's the C shape with the A bass down here, and the chord is G. So it's a G with an A bass. And so the first part is yeah, right, D, G, A. Hear that lonesome violin play. See the notes float up into the overcast, and change to white birds as they sail on through and soar away free. Into incandescent blue. So, in addition to the barring exercise that I was doing to strengthen and toughen my index finger, I would do that repeatedly to failure, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, until my fingers were aching so much that I couldn't do it anymore. The strings were buzzing and it was a displeasing sound, and I found that that was happening in the D and the G strings. You know, if your index finger is bowed like this, then it is those 2 middle strings, the 3rd and the 4th, that are going to fail, and that was the case for me. So I would fail on those. So in between sets where I'm doing this to failure, then I would wait 2 minutes and then do that exercise again. So now I need my fingers to rest, let the ache wane before I restart again. Just like weightlifting, you do sets and reps. So before the next rep, I would rest the capo of my index finger and my thumb, rest those bits, and just work the baby finger and the ring finger. So you're alternating between working the index finger and the thumb really hard, and then resting, cross-training, working fingers 3 and 4 really hard. So I would just go. I'm trying to get used to using these 2 fingers for fingering those chords. Just trying to develop some agility, a little bit of muscle memory too, so that I can make that transition from the G with the B bass shape to the A with the C sharp bass. So it's fast. You can hear I was buzzing there a little bit, but you got to play it cleanly. So I would play that slow enough so I could learn the positions and how to curl the fingers enough so that they're clean. Sometimes I would just focus on those 2 strings, but sometimes I would play the whole chord and try to get all the... So I missed that one. Here's some buzzing there. So, not that good. These again are 13 gauge strings. Very hard to play Bruce Cockburn on 13 gauge strings when we have these involved chords where you need it clean on the open strings. And so I would do that chord, and then the soar away free, that G-shaped chord. Well, it's a G chord with a C shape up here on the 7th fret. And he's taking the bar on, off and on and off and on. Off, on, off, on, off and on, off and on. And you just, to play it cleanly, you really I can only bar those strings 1, 2, and 3. When I started this exercise in these 13 gauge strings, I couldn't really do it. It was just too hard. A month later, I can do it pretty well. As I said, I'm going to change these strings over to 12s, and I bet that I've got them down. So those are 2 Bruce Cockburn songs, but there was another one too that I've been playing for years, not well. And I was frustrated with one chord in particular. So detuned, and the song is Creation Dream. Sitting in silence, counting on nothing. I saw you standing on the sea. Easy so far. And everything was dark except for sparks the wind struck from your hair. This is the hard part. Sparks that turn to wings around you, angel voices mixed with seabird cries, fields of motion surging outward, questions that contain their own replies. So you get the idea. That part there, first of all, you need the bar on all 6 strings. Wrap around the finger for that, thumb for that chord. But then the next sequence is the D in the C shape. And then the next chord, that same chord from Incandescent Blue, the A shape with the C sharp and the bass. But this time you're barring all 5 of the strings, or at least these 4, but all 5 of these strings to play that chord. And you've got to get the middle 4 strings clean, because it's he's playing the middle strings for that set. And then D, the B minor. So that chord sequence from the D shape to the A with the G shape here to the B minor. You've got to have a strong bar to play that. And I'm playing Creation Dream on 13 gauge strings here, which is, pretty good. At the start of this, a month ago, I couldn't do that. The 13s were too tough. But 1 month, every single day, has improved the Bruce Cockburn playing. Now that same chord shape comes up. Now I'm going to explain why I was doing this for rock purposes, because there's a few rock songs I play that have bars in them where it's critical. And I'm going to start with so I'll go through April Wine, Kim Mitchell, and Rush, where the bar is essential. And starting with April Wine, that same chord form that I have there with the A, with the C sharp and the bass, if you move that up, then you've got a B chord with the D, with the D sharp in the bass right there. And off the Electric Jewels album, 1973, I just love that record. And the song Electric Jewels is great. And in the last part of the Electric Jewels, he'd love to be with you. Now listen while you can, and I'll tell you of a man who would sell the world, though it seems absurd. It's true. He'd do it for you. So that chord, the second chord, the B, which has the, if you know the cage system, that's the G shape, but with the these strings barred with your index finger. So you want to play that chord. All 5 of those strings need to be played cleanly, and it's the same problem that you have with Creation Dream here and with Incandescent Blue. That chord, the G shape in the 4th position. You need a strong bar to play that cleanly to make that sound good. Now that's a 5-string bar, and you can probably get away if you can just get the D and the G sounding good. Get those 4 strings clean, and don't worry about the 1st string. That sounds okay, but you got to get the baby finger. You got to get that E string playing the B note at a minimum. So a strong bar is really helpful for playing that song. And there's a few other rock songs. When I go through April Wine, Kim Mitchell, Rush, if I could just focus on one chord for a second, the E flat chord. A lot of people think that, the F chord is infamous for being difficult because it's in a lot of songs in the key of C, because F is the 4th of C. And it's true, F is hard to play. But you know what? F, because you're using these 2 fingers to finger the D string and the G string to get the F and the A in the F chord, which is FAC, it hides any imperfections in barring the D and the G strings. So as long as you're barring the 1st string and the 6th string, your F chord is going to sound okay, because these fingers are hiding imperfections in the middle of your bar. You don't want to have a weak bar, because there's going to be times, for example, when you're soloing a rocket launcher up here, you're going to need. You can't have that. You can't have those muffled. It sounds terrible. So the F chord is not actually as hard as the E flat chord, because it hides imperfections in the middle of your bar. Whereas with the E flat chord, it's harder. You hear that? Because the D, that's E and that's E flat. With the E flat chord, that E flat note, or D sharp, same thing, it's hard. You can see I'm using 2 fingers actually with my middle finger on top of my index finger to make sure I get that thing down. The E flat chord is harder than the F chord because the E flat reveals the imperfections in the middle of your bar with that E flat note. Now, why do I care about that? Because there's some songs that I really, really like a lot, and if you play that E flat sloppy, it sounds terrible. So from April Wine, here's two examples. Bad Side of the Moon. Seems as though I've lived my life on the bad side of the moon. So stir your dregs and sit your stills without a rustic spoon. Now, if you don't play that E flat cleanly, it sounds terrible. So E flat, April Wine, Bad Side of the Moon. E flat, April Wine, also. Time and time again I see a love that seems strong was not meant to be. Broken hearts don't always mend, left too unsure to try love again. You hear that? Left too unsure, E flat and G, E flat and G. And maybe you hear Nirvana or Pearl Jam in there too, with that chord change. But that E flat is critical for Just Between You and Me. One of my favorite songs from Kim Mitchell, Go for a Soda, too. It's a very simple song, except it has the E flat in it. Not only does it have the E flat in it, the E flat is a very critical chord in the very cool little finger picking sequence in the opening. And also alternating between F and E flat is just how the song goes in the verses. So Go for a Soda, you've got to be able to play that E flat chord. And if it's sloppy, it sounds terrible, but if it's clean. So, so on one of my blue moons, you say you want to have it your way, wanted mine. All this debating going around, and the blue moon makes me thirsty for a round. You got to get that E flat sounding nice and clean, at least those 4 strings. Now my fingers are getting a little tired because I've been 20 minutes playing bar chords, F and E flat, and my fingers are starting to ache a little bit, so it sounds a little bit sloppy on these 13 gauge strings, but you get the idea. And then Rush, they don't use, Alex Lifeson doesn't use the E flat very often in the early stuff that I like in the 70s, but from 1982 Signals, The Weapon. Already you're using the bar chords. And the knowledge that they fear is a weapon to be held against them. So you're using that bar quite a bit with the G minor to the D minor to the B flat with the F bass. And the A minor to the E minor to the C no third. But the knowledge that they fear, see that bar, see that E flat, you got to hit that because that's the knowledge that they fear. Knowledge and fear are critical points, lyrical points in the song, so you got to get the chord to match. The knowledge that they fear is a weapon to be held against them. So you need that E flat to play Rush. So Kim Mitchell, April Wine, Rush. that E flat chord, and then Bruce Cockburn, a number of different keys, whether he's soloing in the 7th position or if he's doing intricate finger picking that requires partial bars. It's very useful to have a powerful index finger that can do partial and full bars for all those reasons. Now, I mentioned a little bit about the exercise that I developed, and it evolved over the month. As there's 2 goals with the exercise. It's to develop clamping strength with the thumb and the index finger, and index finger toughness, because I've got very strong calluses on my fingertips from all the fingerstyle play that I do, but my index finger was soft. And funny thing, about after the first week of doing this exercise, I was dragging my index finger across the fret so much that I actually developed points. And there are 4 marks. You won't be able to see them with the quality of this video. There's 4 marks on my fingers where I'm dragging the string across my finger, and there's spots where it's toughened, almost like a callus, but it's just the tiniest point. And that was proof to me that my fingers were strengthening in toughness, not just the clamp strength, but the finger toughness, and that matters. You'll see lots of advice in YouTube where, if you roll your finger a little bit, you'll be putting more of the bone on the close to the fret. So if you roll your finger, instead of using the flesh, you'll be getting some bone in there. Well, for an first position, your finger rolls naturally, but the further you go up, your finger starts rolling in the other direction. Now you're putting bone on the fret here if your elbow's out, but if your elbow's in, it's very hard to roll that index finger. You got to put your elbow right tight to your chest. Very uncomfortable. So I don't know any songs that play in the 9th position. Once you're up that high, they use a capo. Bruce Cockburn is often in the 7th position, like I said, for Rocket Launcher and for Incandescent Blue. So my exercise, I just limited to frets 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I listen for failure, especially in that D and G string, the 3rd and 4th strings. As soon as they start buzzing, I know I'm losing pressure. You can hear it's buzzing now. Of course, I've been playing bar chords now for 25 minutes, so of course you get fatigue building up in there. If I take a rest, that's going to sound a little bit better. The way that I was developing this exercise, that's how the exercise evolved. At first I was doing and then I would slowly change positions. So this was my clamp strength exercise, but then I also had so I'm dragging my index finger more frequently now, creating friction and developing finger toughness. Eventually I hybridized those 2 exercises into just the one. And I would keep doing that until it's buzzing so badly that it would musically sound terrible in a performance. And then I would stop, I would rest, and then I would repeat to another rep. And I would do this for about 15 minutes, 3 times a day. And over the month, I took 2 rest days because I could feel the ache in my wrist and in the base of my thumb. So that was the exercise I did. And in between, I would rest for 2 minutes. And in the 2-minute rest periods between reps, that's where I would work on muscle memory and nimbleness of the second, third, and fourth fingers. Third and fourth here. So you see I'm resting, my thumb and my index finger are completely rested while I'm doing those exercises. So it's cross training because I'm working fingers 3 and 4 hard and alternating that with working the thumb and index hard, alternating hard, 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 instead of, this advice that I don't agree with on YouTube, which is, well, if you want to play bar chords better, well, just play bar chords. Well, playing bar chords, it's like, if you want to lift 50 pounds, are you going to practice lifting 50 pounds once a day? No, you're going to do sets and reps, and you might lift 60 pounds. If your goal in performance is to lift 50, you might lift 60 in training. In training, you're trying to develop strength. So the advice, go to lower gauge strings, well, that's fine for performance, but our goal here is not performance, it's training. That's why I switched from 12 gauge strings to 13 gauge strings, so that it would be harder to do. When I switch back to 12 gauge strings now, I'm hoping that this is going to be, when I play those songs, it's going to sound very clean, very good. The last thing to say is I've given you the why. Why was I learning how to strengthen my bar chord, and how I did it. But performance metric, how do I know I improved? Before I started this exercise, what I did was I put down my infamous F chord, barred in the first position, and I timed how long I could hold that F chord and Travis pick it cleanly. Buzzing there. So I checked how long I could do that before I would get a buzzing in any one string, and I would keep playing it, and how long could I do it before the muscles ached so much that I just had to stop, because in performance it would impede your ability to play any further. And so I timed that, time to failure, time to buzzing and time to failure. Those were my 2 metrics. And what I found was that if I was coming to the instrument cold or with 15 minutes of rest, I could Travis pick that F chord cleanly for about a minute, and I would start buzzing, and then in about a minute 20, it would start hurting, aching so much from the lactic acid buildup that I'd have to stop and shake it out and give it a rest. I would rest for 2 minutes, and I did this resting 2 minutes, and I did the exercise again and again and again to get a precise estimate of how long I could hold that. And with only coming back at it then, not cold but warm, but aching, with 2 minutes of rest, I would consistently, it'd always be about the same, about 24 seconds, and I would get some buzzing. And I could go 40 seconds to failure because the lactic acid had already built up in those muscles, the wrist, the thumb, and mostly the wrist and the base of the thumb. Also the top of the thumb where you get some ache building up there. So the numbers, the time to failure was 24 seconds and 40 seconds. Time to buzz and time to failure. I just redid that. Now it's been a month. I redid that, and the numbers that I got were, I can go now, coming cold to the instrument, I can hold it for a minute 30. I can hold that F chord for a minute 30. And that's the time to both buzz and fail. So a minute 30 compares to, say, a minute. So about 50% longer coming to the instrument cold. With 2 minutes of rest, so in other words, with some ache having built up from lactic acid in those thumb and palm and wrist muscles, whereas I was getting 24 seconds to buzz and 40 seconds to fail, now I'm getting, 1 minute. 1 minute to buzz and 24 seconds to buzz and 40 seconds to fail. Now I'm getting 1 minute to buzz and a minute 40 to fail. So I've more than doubled my my ability to hold a bar. And I did it through that simple exercise of developing index finger toughness and and clamping strength. So in conclusion, I don't really agree with what a whole bunch of people, I didn't find any good videos on how to improve your bar. I couldn't find any. They all seem to me to make bad recommendations. The first thing is they didn't distinguish between training and performance. Yes, if you're performing and you want to play clean bar chords, drop your strings a gauge and you'll be able to finger them cleanly. Well, that's not how to improve your ability to play bar chords. That's how to hide your inability to play bar chords. I want to know how to get better at playing bar chords. So that's why I went up a gauge in strings, made them thicker, harder to play, harder to bend, harder to bar, and did those exercises. And I didn't check that metric for the entire month. I've been practicing that for a month. Today's the first day that I've rechecked where am I at, and I've doubled my ability to. I've doubled that parameter, failure time, time to buzz and time to complete failure, through playing that exercise that I showed you, the hybrid exercise. To be clear, I'm not using my middle finger there at all. That's the exercise. So I did a short video on the exercise, but this longer video, I wanted to explain why was I doing this? What purpose was this serving? How did I take that little 20-second exercise and build it into a daily regimen? And then what was my performance metric for determining whether this was working? And based on everything I've done for the last month, this is an exercise that I'm going to keep in my practice repertoire because it's working. I came back to some of the songs that I mentioned earlier. I could not play Incandescent Blue start to finish when I started this exercise because my bar was so weak and these two fingers were so non-agile, stiff and stupid. But in the next few videos that I do, you'll see I'll play Incandescent Blue and I'll play Rocket Launcher, and I'll play them on 12 gauge strings, and I'm hoping that they'll be super clear, and we'll see when I do the videos. Anyways, YouTube watchers, it's Barry Cooke with acoustic folk rock guitar videos, and a long explanation of how and why you might want to improve your bar the way that I did with exercise over the last month, strength training and toughness training. Happy guitar playing.